Well, what is going on, YouTube? Welcome back to A Therapeutic Edge. Now, before we get into the monster on the table, I'd like to ask those of you that are watching to please subscribe. My channel gets a lot of views, which is awesome, but only about 35% of you are subscribed, and I would love to have all of you here on a regular basis, so please take a minute and subscribe to the channel. That would make me very happy. All right, let's move on. This is the Cold Steel 4MAX. This, well, excuse me, this is one of the most wondrous knives I have ever had. Now, I got this about 2 weeks ago, and I got it because I have the 4MAX Scout, and I fell in love with that anyway, that knife and its overall feel and comfort, but I realized that knowing there was a superior model out there was going to drive me nuts. So I sold some things and bought this. And this is spectacular. Now, I say it's a monster, and many of you may know the 4MAX, but let's take a look at how big it really is before we get really rolling here. This is a Spyderco PM2. just dwarfed by this beautiful monster. This is the full-size Presidio 2 by Benchmade. Again, just dwarfed. Now, you guys know I like big knives, so I broke out some of my bigger knives to run as sort of a comparison. This, of course, is the ADV Pathfinder, the full-size. Again, not compared to the monster that is the 4MAX. This is one of the bigger knives that I've really enjoyed, and these two are an interesting comparison because this is the Hinderer XM24. Now, these are, at least in handle length, very close, but you get a ton more blade on the 4MAX. In fact, you just get a lot more knife. Now, how are these knives similar? Well, this is the tri-way pivot that I have running on phosphor bronze washers. This is running on phosphor bronze washers. This is G10 with a titanium liner and a titanium lock side. This is G10 with titanium liners. They are both CPM 20 CV steel, and they are both oriented around big knife and sort of hard use mentality. Now, down the road a ways, I am going to, as part of what I'm doing in this new era of COVID, is yard maintenance for some properties that my family is related to. I am going to put each of these to the task. I'm going to take turns carrying these two. I'm going to do everything that I would do in a day with a knife with either one. And then I'm going to come back in a couple of weeks probably, and I'm going to tell you which one I think is the better knife. Now, I heard you just now, all of the Hinderer fanboys out there, of which I am one, clench. Well, see, here's the thing. This is a $600 knife. And right now, on a company called Botac Tactical, you can get these for $240. So, yeah, price does play a role. But anyway, I'm going to beat the crap out of both of these, my version of beat the crap out of them, and come back and tell you which one is a better knife for me. I'm not going to try to tell you which is better for you, but I am going to tell you which one, in the end, I prefer. So now, let's talk about the 4MAX. As I mentioned, it is an enormous slab of CPM 20 CV. It has all titanium liners and a titanium pocket clip. This Demko design, now he makes a custom 4MAX. In fact, he makes something called the 5MAX, which my buddy over on Jimmy Slash has, which is a bigger even version of this. And if you're asking yourself, do I want one? Yeah, I do a lot. But for now, this is a factory version of a Demko custom, and it is really, really good. Now, this one is the Italian made. There is an all USA made version as well. They moved production over to Italy because they were having some, I guess, fit and finish problems with the American versions. This one came flawless. It really did. It has the Demko Triad Lock, which I am a huge fan. I know, I can hear you out there. It's not that big. I just like it. It has sculpted G10 with a little bit of, it's flat, but it's got some nice texture on both sides. It is this beautiful sort of gray-blue color that I think is just amazing. I know you guys are saying, but you don't like knives this color. It's close enough to gray that I really enjoy it. It has a very nice edge because of how tall the CPM 20CV blade is. It comes all the way down here to a really nice edge, and mine came hair-popping sharp. This is a cutting tool, even though it is enormous. Now, as you can see in my hand, you still have a fair amount of knife hanging out the back, but it is not as absurd as you might imagine. And because of the shape, you can move forward on this thing for relatively fine work, and it has done a marvelous job at all of that. The action is very good on this knife. I know sometimes these Triad Lock knives have a very stiff sort of detent, a release when you're trying to pop them open, but this one came smooth as butter. If your butter is smooth, I don't know. This has rapidly, almost instantly become one of my all-time favorite knives. It is not for everyone. Women Carry Knives doesn't like this knife. Now, don't get me wrong, she likes the quality of the materials and the way it's made and all that stuff, but, you know, for her, it looks like this. You know, I mean, she's got a whole other knife sticking out the back. This is just not the knife for her. And that's okay. Not all knives are for all people. This one really does happen to be for me. And at $250, let's say, this is absolutely competitive with a myriad of other knives that I own, except it is those knives turned up to 11. It is just fantastic. Now, Demko has, for me, one of the most comfortable sort of ergonomic design aesthetics of anybody going in the knife market. I assume that means that my hands and Andrew Demko's hands are similar in size, because he builds knives. All of his all the 8010, the 8015, all of his cold steel knives fit my hand really well. And maybe that's part of it. These may be too big for some of you, and I understand that. But for me, this is just, well, it's fantastic. God, I love this ridiculous thing. I just think it's great. Let's go ahead and get some measurements out of the way while it's on the table. It's big. No, we'll do better than that. Let's go ahead and line this up. The blade is 1, 2, 3, 4 full inches of cutting on 4 and a little bit of CPM 20 CV. The grip area from just behind this choil back here is 1, 2, 3, 4 and a quarter, coming up to 5 inches around the back. It is 4 1/4 inches inside this area. And if you count the choil, you get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 and a half full inches of grip. This is not an insignificant knife. The blade on this beast is over 1.5 inches from top to bottom. It's just a little bit over 1.5 inches, but it's over 1.5 inches from here to here. It is a lot of knife. Now closed, it's 2 1/8 inches from top to bottom. This thing chews up a lot of pocket real estate. You are not going to carry this in sports shorts, although I have because I'm ridiculous. But in jeans, anything with good durable pockets, I wear a lot of 511 pants when I'm out, especially when I'm working. This thing sits in the pocket remarkably well for its size. It is, well, let's go ahead and use the caliper instead of my eye, shall we? So, what do you get? Well, you get just shy of 5 millimeters of CPM 20 CV. Through its thickest spot, it is 17 millimeters, or 0.68 of an inch, almost 3/4 of an inch through the center. It is a big knife. Now, some of you are quite wisely asking, why would anyone want a knife this big? And I can't answer that for many of you. I can only say that for those of you that like big knives, you will immediately understand why I love this thing so much. Some of you, which is totally understandable, think of things like, oh, this. The Rat 1 as a big knife, pushing the boundaries of what you're comfortable carrying. And I totally get that. That's not me. This is a good big knife. Some of you see things like the Presidio 2 here and think that's just enormous. It's too big. It doesn't make any sense to carry that on a regular basis. And again, I totally understand that. But I'm not that way. I like a really good big knife. And right here in front of us, Cold Steel, with a lot of Andrew Demko, has produced a really good big knife. The thumb studs are in just exactly the right position. It pops open with authority. The weight of the blade and the way this thing is balanced means that it is balanced right here where your finger wants it to go. It is easy to work with because of that, even with this massive blade. If the knife was any lighter, with this much CPM 20 CV in the front, it would be front heavy, which would mean it doesn't feel quite so balanced in hand. But this thing is exceptionally well balanced, and that's what makes it such a great user. This titanium pocket clip has lots of spring, unlike the Cold Steel pocket clips that are made out of stamped steel in this same shape, which are, well, everybody knows they're very hard to use. Because this is titanium, it has just enough give that this thing slips in and out of pocket exceptionally easily. Now, running on the phosphor bronze washers, it is already a relatively smooth action, but I can tell already that 6 months or a year from now, with regular use, this thing is going to run like oiled glass. I have not even lubricated this yet because I'm giving the washers a chance to break in. Let's get to the 800-pound gorilla in the room, or in this case, the 10.3 ounce gorilla. This is an exceptionally heavy knife because it has to be, because it is the size of a small car. By way of example, the XM24, a well-known and expected large knife, is 7.8 ounces. But here's the thing. In hand, that extra 2.5 ounces doesn't really show itself. Because of the way Demko designed this knife, it doesn't feel 10 ounces in hand. It doesn't even feel 10 ounces in pocket. This rides as well as, in fact better than, some of my lighter knives that have a more sort of bulky and aggressive pattern. I love this ADV Pathfinder. I do, but it's not deep carry, and it's got all of these ridges and all this material on it. This thing makes more of an impact in my pocket than this does. Now, granted, you're not going to carry anything else in your pocket. That's true. But once you've accepted that, and you kind of have to do that with big knives anyway, it is surprising how well this giant thing carries. And of course, I wear a belt. If you're wearing dress pants and no belt and you put this in your pocket, you're going to walk into your next meeting naked, which, depending on the job you have, may or may not be a good idea. In the end, this has rapidly, as I mentioned, become one of my all-time favorite knives. And I think it does not get nearly the attention that it deserves. Now, it is not a new knife. It's been around a long time. And a lot of people are going to say, yeah, but this and yeah, but that. And I understand that. But the nice thing about knife collecting, and again, I do bring you knives that are sent to me by makers and manufacturers. I share knives with you that I think are interesting for the channel itself. But a huge part of what I do here is stuff that I have brought in for my personal collection. And this is such a welcome member of the collection. I cannot even express, except I've tried for the last 8 or 9 minutes or whatever this is, to express how much I love this knife. Andrew Demko designs knives that might as well be made just for me. And that, well, that matters. So again, look for a competitive overview of these two monsters. I will put them through my version of tests that will include cutting whatever material I need to cut out in the garden. I will make steaks with them, which means I will do some whittling, and I will likely even use them to cut up my lunch that day. And then I'm going to come back in a couple of weeks and tell you which one has served me better. But until then, thank you so much for watching. This again has been the Cold Steel Formax, the Italian-made version. I have been a Therapeutic Edge. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you next time.